Welcome to Pixel Realms, the podcast where two geeks dive headfirst into the gaming multiverse. They're basically like Gandalf in a headset, minus the wisdom and magic. So, grab your snacks and level up your patience. Pixel Realms, where the pixels are real, but the knowledge, not so much.
This is Pixel Realms, episode 17. Games that we would like to see remade or remastered, our personal wish list. And once again, as always, it's your hosts, Mark and Joe. And to start off, we've got a little bit of news that Joe would like to give us. So, hey, let's go.
So, Ubisoft, which we rant about almost every single episode because why not? It's Ubisoft. They announced that there is a new showcase coming out on March 13th. It will be on Twitch, and it's all around Rainbow Six Siege. And they've been very cautious on what actually is going to be in the showcase, other than Rainbow Six, of course. So, yeah. One of the big things people have been pissed about, at least longtime Rainbow Six fans like myself, is that Siege is very different than your typical Rainbow Six game. It is a multiplayer game. Back. Yeah. Well, the rumor is that potentially they're getting into the tactical aspect of Rainbow Six games again. So it'd be interesting to see if they do Vegas style. And so if you remember, I know we talked about this.
Siege will, though.
Well, if you remember, Mark, when Siege first was announced, it was going to be kind of a mixed bag of the OG Rainbow games and Vegas, and that was the initial trailer that came out at probably E3, and it looked really, really cool. It was a house, it was a building, it was communication, it was a very tactical approach. And then what we got was a Call of Duty knockoff that's been super successful for Ubisoft, and I think it's probably why they still exist. Is Rainbow Six's money that they get in. But if they go tactical, like this could be really cool.
Here's the thing, like Siege itself isn't a bad game. It's a little bit more than Call of Duty, but you're on the right track. It's like a Call of Duty, I guess, battle royale, because it's like just a squad-based elimination style game. But for what it's worth, I don't play these type of games. I know you don't either, but I've seen enough gameplay, and there's some really skilled players out there that I've watched play the game, and it's a solid game. But like you said, you went from a series that was very tactical, very strategic, very like you have your squad, you assign your squad certain duties. You don't just go in guns blazing. And you change it into like a battle royale-esque style games, and you're pissing off the core player base. Now, I'm cool with them bringing it back. Obviously, I want them to bring it back. Do I think Siege, any follow-up to Siege is going to be that? No, I think the next Siege game is going to stay Siege. But if they announce a like return to like a Rainbow Six Vegas, then hey, have your Siege games, make your money, but give back to your fans too.
Well, they've definitely clearly said it's going to be a new game mode and quote deepened tactical gameplay.
Okay, it is Ubisoft though, so I expect them to fuck it up. But I'll remain optimistic.
It's apparently going to be a free. They say
it's fucked.
They say, and I quote, will transform live service tactical shooters. So we'll see what happens.
We're gonna have next.
The showcase is March 13th, I believe it is, and of course,
so
March 13th.
So under a month.
We'll cover it here on the channel once that showcase does happen. We won't likely, unless something big, we won't cover it live, but we'll see what happens. But in other interesting news, we have the PlayStation. What's it called?
The State of Play. They do. Play. I can't remember how many they do a year. I heard some people say that they only do like one major one a year or not. I don't remember. I feel like they do a couple a year, so I don't think that's true. But this was the most recent one, and everybody, as usual, was holding their breath, hoping for stuff, but one of the first major things that they announced was the remaster of Days Gone. You know, the very old game that has been out about 10, 15 years. Oh, wait, that says 2019 on the release date. Remaster of a 2019 game. Yeah, so...
Everyone's been asking for a sequel for a long time. And Sony's like, yeah, okay, sequel? Let's give you a remaster. It's perfect.
Yeah, people been asking for a sequel to this because I didn't think the first one did that good.
Oh, it did really well. It did really well for Sony.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
it came out at the perfect time, tail end of the zombie world of stuff. And the gameplay is really, really cool. It's unique and different. It's kind of like what's that called? State of
State of Decay?
State of Decay. Yeah, it's like that, but instead of having a group of people, it's just you. No, it's fun. It's really good. No, it's actually a fun game. You haven't played it yet, have you?
I haven't played it. I've watched enough of it.
You're not into zombie games, I don't think either.
I mean, I love State of Decay. I like State of Decay. I like a lot of zombie games, but I watched a lot of people play that game. A lot of people, especially some of the bigger ones that like play the whole game through and do like 100%ing. And the one thing I noticed about it was that it was very long. The story just kind of it's sort of repetitive where he's always like looking for his like
it's sold 7.3 million copies, making it top 10.
Okay. It looked very generic. It looked like a very generic zombie shooter where they tried to implement like these big hordes of zombies, and I don't think the technology could handle it at the time.
It did actually. That's the thing. It did. That's what made it so unique, is that there were whatever 100 different zombies coming at you, and it was no performance drop whatsoever. It was quite impressive.
Okay, well, maybe I'll give it a try at some point. Probably not, but still, 2019, and we're getting a remaster, or like that. Okay.
Sony's all about remasters, though, because they remastered Horizon Zero Dawn not too long ago, and I wouldn't be surprised. Well, they're also remastering, rumor is, nothing official, but rumor is they're remastering God of War stuff. Not the newer God of War, but the OG God of War stuff.
The OG shit's old. Let's let the game get some dust on it first before you remaster it. 2019?
No, not that one. Oh, this one, yeah, this one for sure. This one doesn't need a remastered version. Same with Horizon, doesn't need a remastered version.
The old God of War games, the original God of War games are old as fuck.
Yeah,
now, those ones. Talking about, I was about to say, if you're talking about the two newest God of War games, if that first one gets a remaster, I'm gonna fucking lose my mind. Anyways, moving on. Metal Gear, an update from Metal Gear Snake Eater. Now, unfortunately, I never got into Metal Gear. Kojima's always his games have always been kind of, I don't know, like there's something about Kojima's games that I don't think they're made for me. I do not shit on them. I just recognize that they might not be for me. His storytelling is a little interesting.
I liked Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain. Before I didn't play anything before that.
That's funny. Those are like the most hated of the series.
Yeah, and I think it's because they changed it so much, but I enjoyed it. Like Ground Zeroes, I liked the most. But
yeah, that makes sense for you, I guess. But Snake Eater. So Snake Eater is interesting because I feel like that one is like the most beloved, or at least very close. Like, the first three games are always talked about in such like reverence. But I don't know. I feel like Snake Eater is the most popular, but I might be wrong. I just know that people really like Snake Eater, so I was a little surprised, but not. I didn't hate that we were remaking.
Wait, hold on. What you just said, it was wrong. Phantom Pain is getting an average of 9 out of 10 across the board, critically acclaimed.
Okay, but those are critics. I'm talking about like the fan base. Usually, when you hear people who love Metal Gear games, they don't talk well about the end of Kojima's run or after Kojima's gone. Because I think, wasn't he like gone and they had to finish the game or something? I forget what happened there. There was
one game of the year.
Well, of course it did. It was a Metal Gear game. It was going to win no matter what.
Sold 5 million copies.
Anyways, it doesn't matter. Like, that's all just numbers. I'm talking about player fan base. Like, people, like, I don't know. I don't care, right? I really don't give a shit. You know, either way, it's getting some kind of remake I think it's a remake. I don't think it's a remaster.
It's kind of that mixed kind of bag thing.
Bag. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see how it goes. I mean, it's a Metal Gear game. It's gonna do well, unless they somehow manage to fuck up an already good game with their tweaks and whatever. It should do well. Borderlands 4 is coming. They've got to recoup their losses on the Borderlands movie, I'm sure. So, you know, sure, let's pump out another Borderlands game. I mean, it should do well, right? Like, I think...
it will do fine. It will do fine.
Yeah, like, I think Borderlands 3 was unanimously not very favored either, but it probably still sold amazingly well.
Oh, yeah, it did well. Yeah, a lot of... when it came out, I was working where there's two of my coworkers. They played the hell out of Borderlands games. They loved it. And they went ham on that game, and they had a blast. I'm not like a big Borderlands fan by any means. I just like open world shooters.
And I think I've mentioned before that Borderlands is the one series I haven't been able to play because the field of vision, I guess, or something about the way the cell shading graphics mix together messes with me really bad to where a point. It's the only game or game series I've ever played that wasn't in VR that I got motion sickness playing.
I could see that. Yeah. I get it too sometimes with that game.
Now there are ways to fix it later. You know, I tried playing it again with another friend who helped me fix the I think it's the FOV that we had to fix, but and it made it better, but I still wasn't super feeling it. But it's another one of those games. It was like, I don't want to say it was one of the original looter shooters, but it was definitely one of the more original popular at the time, right? Like, looter shooters weren't huge until Borderlands, I don't think.
Yeah.
So, I just know that a lot of people were disappointed in 3. It doesn't mean it was a bad game. It doesn't mean it didn't sell well. It's just that I know that a lot of people were disappointed in it. Like a lot of again hardcore fans of the series thought it was a little more generic than 1 and 2. That again, that doesn't mean the game was bad by any means. It's just that, like, from what they had expected from a Borderlands game.
Yeah.
You know, and then we have another Five Nights coming out. Another game series that should have ended with the first one, but somehow it's gotten to the point where it's gotten a movie and there's toys of it. So I guess
I've only played the VR, a little bit of the VR of Five Nights, and probably only the demo. It's nothing I'm interested in.
There's only one Five Nights style game that I'm kind of interested in, and it was a newer one that was like kind of like side scrolly that came out more recently. I forget what the fuck it's called, but it was way different than your normal Five Nights. So another Five Nights game. I don't know if it's a sequel. I don't think it is. I think it's a side game, but I could be wrong. And then the final bit of news, because there was a bunch of other games announced. Some of them I'm actually excited for, but they're a little too far away, and they wouldn't be what I call major titles yet. So we're not going to cover them right now. But the big final announcement is everyone's so happy. Finally they announced that Bloodborne port. Finally it's coming. Oh yeah, they didn't again as usual. So once again, for the 100th millionth time, after DMCAing people who made like perfectly acceptable, great ports of the game so that people could enjoy the game on PC, and they were like, nah, you can't have fun because it's our game. So obviously they would, rectify that by announcing either a sequel or a port to PC, but of course they once again didn't do that. Once
I
again,
wonder what the deal is with Bloodborne because it's one of those. Well, I don't know though, because
it's crazy.
I think about like Half-Life. People have been asking for Half-Life, sequels, not VR, but standard, 2D versions of it. And like Valve never's pushed on that one. Is Bloodborne going to be that for Sony? A title
See,
that we've been dying for a sequel,
but
and
here's the
we're never going to
thing.
get.
With the Valve games, I feel like it's a little bit different. Where those franchises were insanely popular, but I'm trying to remember the storylines of those games, right? And I feel like I don't know about Half-Life, but I feel like Portal, you did all that you needed to do with the storyline of the quote unquote characters of Portal, because the little robot
Yeah,
and the female voiced robot were like the main characters, and then like even the Left 4 Dead games, you had kind of the conclusion of Left 4 Dead 1 kind of fit into Left 4 Dead 2. And yeah, you didn't get a full-on story conclusion, I think, for the Left 4 Dead 2 characters, but and I feel like Half-Life might be one of those things where by the time Half-Life 2 was done, and maybe Alex, I don't know, I never played the VR version, but I feel like maybe they just finished telling the story that they wanted to tell, whereas Bloodborne, that's different. They just want the first game to be playable on PC.
maybe
And
there's something to do with like I don't know. Maybe they have some rights restrictions. I don't know enough about the detail of Bloodborne if they don't own it all, and who knows. There's got to
I
be
don't
something
know.
behind it because it's one of the most requested
Then
Sony
why not
games.
say it? But why not say it? Why not finally put fans at ease and be like, okay,
Yeah,
this is the reason why we can't put it out for PC, or why we haven't made a sequel yet. There's a legitimate reason. Even if they can't go into full-on details, if they gave the fandom at least some kind of explanation, that maybe you wouldn't have hardcore fans watching every one of their damn state of plays hoping for the next game.
yeah.
Hoping and hoping, unless that's why they don't tell anyone. Well, as long as we don't give them what they want, they're going to watch our state of plays. But I would hope that a fucking state of play video isn't why they would hold back on releasing a game that's going to make them, dump trucks full of money. Because that's it was like how I felt about Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
When everyone had that Final Fantasy VII movie, that beautifully animated Advent Children movie, everyone was like, we're ready. And then the tech demo for PlayStation 3 was Final Fantasy VII. Just that opening scene with Cloud jumping off of the train. Everyone was like, oh, we're going to get it. And then we didn't get it. And everyone was like, why won't you make this? Don't you want money? We will throw money at you. We will, throw buckets of money at you. Why won't you give us this? And then finally it said, okay, tee, here it is. So that's what I don't get about Bloodborne. Everybody wants the game. Even non-Souls players like me would like to at least try it.
Yeah.
Because it's such a beloved game. I don't get it. But anyways, let's move on to happier, funner things. Let's talk about the topic, which is we both kind of made a small-ish wish list of games that we would just really like to see either remade or remastered, that were just either very dear to our hearts or just good games that we think should be updated for modern times or brought out for modern times.
So, and honestly, the idea of this popped into my head yesterday. I was watching a movie with one of our only guest on an episode here recently, the MMO episode, Vaz. We were watching a movie, and then we started talking about Disney remakes. And he was talking about how he's never seen any of the Disney remake movies. And I was saying, well, Beauty and the Beast wasn't so bad, and Lion King wasn't so bad, and they changed things, whatever. But then it got me thinking about games. And obviously, we've had remastered, revision games that have come out, and a lot of them are pretty awful. Some of them are cash grabs. Think about recently, they had a Star Wars, what the heck was it called? The Bounty Hunter one that was not great. It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
The controls are all screwed up. The key binding's really bad. People bitching about that. The graphics are pretty much the same.
Even the follow-up to Jedi Survivors wasn't as good. It wasn't as hyped as the original. Despite it not being that terrible of a game.
Yeah. So that's there are good and there are bad when it comes to it. And when talking about a good one is recently the Dead Space game. Dead Space from EA had a really good remastered revision. The core concept of the game was still there with major new upgraded graphics,
Wasn't
which
it like
made
a
it
full
incredible.
remake? Like they wasn't it like a whole new game. They just kept the core vision.
The story's the same for the most part.
Yeah.
The
But didn't they build it from the ground up?
Yeah, it's built in the Unreal Engine.
Okay.
So it has a lot of the spookiness is even at a higher level than the OG one, which I played the OG one and back in the day, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And then this one came out and it's like, holy crap. It kind of took like, if you remember the Doom series, and then all of a sudden, when they released Doom, what was it? Doom 3?
The new one, the I don't remember what year it came out.
Yeah, it came out whatever 15 years ago, whatever it'd be now. And it went dark and, creepy, whatever. Same thing with Wolfenstein. Wolfenstein did the same thing. Return to Castle Wolfenstein went dark and dingy. That's it. They took that concept and went extreme. And it was one of the best remake games I've ever had the opportunity to play. And Blizzard also got there eventually with Warcraft 3. They added their Reforged version that came out, and
it sucked at first.
It sucked, yeah. They changed the gameplay drastically. Players are pissed off about it. Graphics were visually amazing, incredible, like exactly what we want for new age graphics. But they changed so much of the core game that it pissed off a lot of gamers, including me, who it's the only Blizzard game that I know of that Blizzard allowed refunds on their own Battle.net. The only game. And I was one of those people that refunded it. Yeah.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah. And then Diablo 2. They had a remaster of Diablo 2, and it did extremely well. And I had a blast replaying Diablo 2 again from Blizzard. That's one of the games that they did a great job at remastering and revisioning, better graphics. And the cool thing about it is that you can push a button, and it would go back to the OG game. So it's the OG game. On top of it had the visual layer of new graphics. And I thought that was such a brilliant move.
I still need to pick it up, but I've seen enough of it to be like that where I was impressed by what they did with it, and the fact that you can just alter it back to the original game if you're tired of seeing the newer graphics because you just miss the nostalgia. Like that's just plus. Like I don't know. Like as much as I have many times said on this podcast that I hate giving Blizzard credit for things. When it comes to certain things, they do a good job. Even if you're not satisfied with the company itself or the people that work there, some of their end products are usually, at least the fan base or the people who play them and buy them, usually walk away happy. And at the end of the day, that is what matters moreover than like everyone's satisfaction. Like if the core fan base and the people who are buying the game like it, then that's all that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that whole idea of that the base game is underneath is such a brilliant. And so going forward, I want that concept for every one of these titles that we mentioned, or at least that I mentioned, and probably Mark would be agreeing on this one. You can go back and see the OG, and I know it'd be very difficult, especially with a game like Dead Space. It'd be very difficult to do such things. They did change a few of the gameplay mechanics, like the ability to save whenever the hell you wanted to, instead of going to kind of like an Alien Isolation where you have to go to one of those save spots and insert a little disc. That's kind of how the old Dead Space was. But I'd like to have at least that foundation still there, where you can still see parts of the OG game. And I figure, Mark, I think best to do this would be maybe I can name one off and then you can name one off your list.
Yeah, but I do want to start off with, you know what? You go ahead and do your first one, and then I'll go into what I want to say. Go ahead.
Okay. So for me, it would be SimCity. And the last SimCity game we had was pretty crappy. SimCity 4 is what it was. I don't remember. It completely changed all of the gameplay. Everything was changed. They just should have just changed the name from SimCity to SimCrap, because that's what gave birth to cities, city skylines, right? 4. Well, no, I'm talking about like City Builder.
No, I mean Sims 4 instead of Sims 4, it should have been Sims Crap.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, but if EA actually made a good SimCity back then, we wouldn't see. Yeah, we probably wouldn't have seen cities Cities.
Skylines is Skylines was almost like a spiritual successor.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like,
it took off.
If SimCity just would have done its job, we wouldn't have had other versions of it come out eventually from other companies, which are good and bad. Of course, Cities 2, Skylines, Cities, whatever it's called, bombed initially at launch because it had a bad engine, is old dated engine. Performance is awful. They changed so much about it. And it was one of the most requested, refunded games on Steam. But for SimCity, it'd be really cool to have a remastered, reversion, re-updated graphics, all that kind of jazz. But on the foundation is still the OG game, kind of like what they've done recently from Microsoft with Age of Empires. They've kind of remastered the first couple of them and enhanced the graphics quite a bit, and it looked really, really cool. I'm just not big into Age of Empires myself, but
yeah, but they made them look nice again.
Yeah. All right, Mark, what do we have for yours here? What do you had something you would say first?
Yeah. So, Joe, you know this because most of all, but what I go by online, I go by the name Hisoka, right? But what on all of my social tags is my actual name? It's Hisoka what?
RPG. Yeah.
And so my list is almost exclusively RPGs or JRPGs. And we'll get as I name off the list, let you know as we're doing this, I'll have things to say about it. But that's unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to take this, as I was thinking about this list, making this list, I was really having trouble with the list at first because I was trying to not just do RPGs. And the more I thought about it, it was like, but that's my core games. That's what fine, I played the most.
That's what you have fun with.
But I initially I was having a hard time with it because I was just trying to have a little more diversity. And then at the end of the day, I settled for like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to go with what I know because these are the games that I do wish were remade or remastered. So I'm starting with Legends of Dragoon. It is a PlayStation 1 classic JRPG. It is actually a very important game in my life, as in me and my wife loved the game so much that we used the theme song in our actual wedding. So like just the game itself meant a lot to us, as well as the music from it. It was, I think, the first video game like art of this kind, because my wife was never a big gamer ever. She's not a gamer now. She's always been like a bookworm, and she loves reading books and whatnot. So when we got together, these were some of the first kind of games of these kind for her, and this was the first one that she played. She watched me play it, and then she got interested enough that she ended up playing it. Now, most JRPGs are just, or at least especially the old ones, were just simple turn-based RPGs. You take your turn, enemy takes their turn, you take your turn, etc. This one was a little bit different, as you had button commands to try and like power up your attacks. Like you equip a new weapon, and that weapon had a certain combo that if you pulled off, the weapon strike was more powerful, and certain weapons had even higher and harder combos. Some of the characters in the game I could never master because I just didn't have the reaction time, or something just didn't work with me and my brain, that I would have to stick to like lower level gear in regards to like attacks because I couldn't master it. So that was a little bit of a down part, but also it was innovative and unique for its time, and it didn't make the game unplayable. I never had a problem beating the game because I couldn't master a weapon skill. But yeah, that comes to mind first. I think it was a 1996 or 1997 game. I mean, it's old. It's in these terms old. So, and it's never, not unlike Final Fantasy, Final Fantasies and other big series, it didn't become a series because I loved the game, and for as great as the game was, though, it kind of did what it needed to do and then left. It didn't really need a sequel. But it left just enough crumbs that you could theoretically make a sequel, but it really did everything it needed to in the 3 or 4 discs that the original game was, and it was a 1999 game.
Yeah,
so yeah, that would be my first one.
That would be cool. And like, to dive back more into the RPG thing, like, it's good to have your foundation, though. My wife, I've talked about it a couple different times. She's very particular in her games, and she's mostly into high fantasy type of games. Yeah, Skyrim, Dragon Age, etc. Those kind of high fantasy type things.
Very
she loves it.
Very D&D-esque, especially if you come from a D&D background, like I believe your wife did. Me, not as much, but at the same time, I did. I played D&D back in 3rd edition, so I wasn't there for OG, obviously, but 3rd edition, 3.5, a very little bit of 4, original Pathfinder, and then of course now 5th edition.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna name off a couple real quick here, because not that big. We talked about Diablo before. With Diablo 2, it'd be cool to have a Diablo 1, similar to how we had 2. BioShock is a game that's beloved by so many people, and it's almost 20 years old at this point. It's 18 years at this point.
I argue though that they did kind of do like a remastery kind of thing,
but not from the ground up though.
That's true.
That's
but
what
they
I'm looking
do still
for.
Play very well though.
They do.
I just watched part 1, a bit of it be played last month, and it still looks fantastic for a game that's 20 plus years old.
Just imagine though, they took the same kind of things what they did at Dead Space with the Unreal Engine or so, and brought into BioShock. It would be something truly amazing. Now this one, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this one, and this is BioForge. BioForge is one of the.
I don't know that game.
It's one of the first PC games I actually saw, and that's actually so Vaz. I was over at his place. I was 12 years old maybe. And it's an old PC game, came out in 95. But what's unique about it is, at the time, it was one of the very first games that had a character that would get wounded in combat, and you would see blood on its model. You'd see it on its limbs. You would see health effects. And we're talking about 3D kind of games like this, right? It had... When you would shoot at it, you'd see different lights bounce off it. It had a full animated skeleton, which for a time frame was amazing. And it's really, really cool. It's one of the very first, I think it was the first PC game I actually got to see. And it was so cutting edge when it came out in 95 on the PC. And it was published by EA, back when EA actually used to make really cool games. So this would be amazing. Now, they did re-release it on GOG back in 2012, but it's like the OG game. So it'd be really cool to see, again, an example of having the Unreal Engine with a modern kind of feel to it.
Okay. My next game is so this one's so a couple of these games on this list are a little bit harder to. So Final Fantasy IX is already getting some kind of remake. I don't remember if it's going to be a game or something. I think it's getting a game and some kind of animated series as well, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Yeah, I think so. I thought that's what I saw as well.
Yeah, and this is my another game that's very important to me and my wife. Legend of Dragoon and Final Fantasy IX were sort of the first 2 games that I got her to play, and that we kind of played together, in the sense that, like, as I was playing the game and cutscenes would happen, she would be just as invested, and by the time it was over, she wanted to play it herself to do it. And then I'm going to go ahead and go off of that with another game because it's already being remade, is Final Fantasy VII. We've been wanting it for years, hardcore fans, and we finally got it. Granted, it wasn't exactly what we wanted, but at the same time, it was. So Final Fantasy VII was 3 discs originally, and way outdated animation, but still overall a great game. These remakes are a lot flashier, a lot more intense, a lot more dramatic, maybe too dramatic at times. The first game, Final Fantasy VII Remake, essentially that whole 40 plus hour game, the gameplay that it kind of replicated or remastered from originally maybe was like the first 3 to 5 hours of the first disc. And then the second game sort of kind of I think was the end of disc 1 or 2. I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 where somebody expires that will not be named, even though everybody knows who it is, but generic spoilers for whoever hasn't played Final Fantasy in 30 years and hasn't heard like some of one of the most iconic scenes. Either way, it's kind of weird how they're doing this remake, because the third one is supposed to be the last one. So kind of in the sense of the original game that was 3 discs, this is going to be 3 games. But the storytelling is way out of, changed. That, one game was like the first 3 hours of the first game, and then the second game was like maybe a disc, maybe 2 discs. I might be misremembering. And then I'm assuming that the third and final disc, or most of it, will be the third game, which will probably just be the entire game from start to finish will just be one Sephiroth boss fight. So, enjoy your 60 hours of just fighting Sephiroth. Yeah, so that's those are 2 games that were very important to me, and I wanted remastered and are getting remasters and re-releases. So that's why it's like a cop out. The same thing, I'm going to go ahead and add one more here because it's another one that's been confirmed. So I'm a big fan of a series called Legend of Heroes Trails of the Sky. It's another old school JRPG, really popular in Japan, translated into, now it's Trails of Cold Steel. But the original trilogy, very, very, very classic style JRPG. And just last year, they announced that the first of the trilogy, I'm assuming, which will be a trilogy again, is getting a complete remake in modern day graphics with voice acting, etc. So since they're already been announced, I figured I'd fit them all in one deal since they already are coming. All right, Joe, your turn.
And see, it's cool that you get to see some of those actually happening. Your wish list actually comes true. And I think that's really cool. And so I'm going to go with Half-Life, the first one. Half-Life 2 is getting a remake, kind of, sort of, the RTX version. Be cool to see the OG officially get a release. I know there is a fan-made version that had come up with the same pixel graphics and all that jazz, which is good and cool, but it'd be cool to have, again, updated graphics. Yeah. This one, go ahead.
No, just a real quick thing. I'm kind of with you, though. Valve is so odd to me. Like, I wish I could be like a fly on the wall in that room sometimes because I like the fact that they had 3 huge games, 4 technically, because I'm forgetting about Team Fortress as well.
Yeah.
And you won't get a part 3 of any of them is crazy to me.
I think they're a smart company because they understand, yeah, we could throw anything out there and make money off it, but should we? Do they stop and think, should we do it? We can do it. So I don't know. Yeah. They're a smart company. As much as we crave and want sequels to some of their stuff, they're like, you don't though. You don't.
or we don't really need to make it because we did what we wanted to do with it, and we're not really going to be able to reinvent the wheel and to make it meaningful.
Yeah.
Because these games are our beloved and whatnot. Like even like Team Fortress, people who love Team Fortress really love Team Fortress and the characters that you meet in Team Fortress. So even though it's just a team based multiplayer deathmatch style type game, it there's something about it that people love. So they like you said, maybe that's the thing is they're treating their properties with respect because there's no reason why if they were just a money completely based on or a company completely based on money there's no reason why you wouldn't pump out sequels of these games that people were just begging and dying for.
Absolutely. And I'm sure most of our listeners understand that Valve is responsible for Steam, but Steam wasn't the thing that made Valve big back in the day. It was their games. And then eventually they're like, hey, let's make a marketplace. And then it took over PC gaming. And honestly, without Valve, we would have been screwed. Think about it. Like, I don't know about you, how much you, Mark, but like, I got into gaming first on PC. And then because developers started leaving PC, it went to consoles because the PS2 was hot, the Xbox was hot, PS3, etc. was all hot. They shifted their development over to the consoles and left the PC to dry. But then Valve's like, hey, let's try to get this together again. Let's try to rebuild something. Let's make a foundation. And they did with Steam. It was a marketplace for the PC. It made it easy for gamers to go and get any title they want for the most part, with a few exceptions. And think about today. Steam, as much as Epic gives out free games every single month and so much free crap, and they pay developers just to bring over their titles exclusively to their platform, number one is Steam by a landslide.
Yeah, I mean, I played consoles when I was younger, but they never really stuck. It wasn't until I met Vaz that gaming stuck with me, and it was PC gaming. It started a little bit with Dreamcast. I did like the Dreamcast a lot, but I still wasn't like religiously playing it. It wasn't until I really got invested in PC because of him that I became like a gamer.
We should both go and beat the living hell out of him because he's corrupted our life, I think.
He literally has ruined my life.
I could have been like a doctor or something. I could have been something successful in my life.
I know, right? I always jokingly say he ruined my life because first he gave me my addiction to video games, then he gave me my addiction to anime. And I'm only saying this because I know my wife listens to the podcast and she can hopefully take a joke, honey.
Oh, God. Divorce papers coming in.
I wouldn't have been married with kids now if it wasn't for Vaz because he introduced me to anime and we had a local store that you could rent anime like Blockbuster, but it was dedicated to anime and video games. And my wife also went to that store and we met at the store and hit it off and got together. So Vaz literally ruined my life. Kappa.
Bad Company 1 and 2. But
Bad Company was a really good game.
Yeah, and I bring it up because there's a YouTuber I watch, and he had recently reviewed Bad Company 2, and he had a blast playing it. But they had a mode called Onslaught that was really cool. It was like it was PvE, and it wasn't like a horde mode by any means, but you would go to a base with your homies, co-op, and complete the objective. Go in there and steal this, take this off, turn that off, kill everyone, whatever the mission would be. And it was such a fun game mode that I think I played with 3 or 4 other people at the time. It was so cool. And then you could just hop in do randoms. And I don't like normally playing games with randos, but this was one of those games I was willing to do that because everyone, compared to what Battlefield games are now, which is go to objective A and capture the flag, go to objective B and capture the flag, hold it for so long. This had the simple thing, which is go in there and just do this one thing. That's it. And it was a blast just doing that. And it was a nice short little, 15, 20-minute gameplay. per map. And the maps are amazing. It was all destructive world, so you can kind of plan each strategy differently every time you go in and do that one map. So really, really cool. And then continue with that Medal of Honor, which did kind of sort of get a reboot. I guess a reboot. Yeah, back in 2016 or something like that. I want to see the OG. I want to see the old D-Day kind of Medal of Honor reboot in today's gameplay, graphics, and all that jazz. And I think we might. I heard rumors, and it may just be rumors at this point, but EA might be looking at doing something with Medal of Honor.
Yeah, I just want to add real quick back on the Bad Company. I really like the Bad Company games. I was never a Battlefield fan. I was never a Call of Duty fan, any of those kind of games. But the Bad Company games were very fun, and I think they kind of gave DICE their name and their credit.
Yep, I forgot the DICE was the one involved with that for sure. Yeah, without them, like, I don't know.
Yeah, the gaming would look kind of differently if DICE hadn't succeeded with those games.
Yeah, and before you jump into the next one, because this kind of encapsulates what you just said about wouldn't exist kind of thing, is MAG. And MAG was, I don't remember what it stands for anymore. Let me see if I can, no, I can't really figure it out really quick. But anyways, it was a game that was exclusive to the PlayStation 3. I don't know if it was a launch title or not, but anyways, the big thing about it was that it would have up to 256 players on one map. Talk about massive multiplayer. Is that what it stood for? Something like massive multiplayer action shooter or something like that? And there was no performance drops, because it would load in only, the people within your area, but the maps were gigantic. The missions were just extraordinary. It'd be like an hour-long mission. It was way ahead of its time, but I think that's what gave the foundation to the big worlds we see in Battlefield nowadays. There's a massive just planes in the sky, tanks on the grounds, boots on the grounds walking. That's what gave the inspiration to the games we see now in terms of these massive shooters. And MAG just came out a few years too early. And on the wrong platform, probably.
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to do something mid podcast and add something to my list that I thought about it.
Can't do that. It's against rules.
I know, right? But I'm going to go ahead and say, even though we kind of do have a spiritual successor, I want the old SWAT games back.
Yeah.
I like Ready or Not. It's a great game. I just want more, and SWAT was my start when it came to those style of games.
We played the old SWAT 3.
And SWAT 4.
Or SWAT 4, yeah. That's the one we played together, you, me, and Vaz, not too long ago, right?
Yeah, it didn't hold up as well, but it was still, the old maps were still fun. But I just want those original games brought back to the forefront, completely remastered, but keep the same core mechanics and the core gameplay and the semi-intelligent AI.
Yeah. For back then, man, the AI was impressive with those games.
Yes, exactly. So I just want
compared
more
to the cheaters we have now. Ready or Not.
Ready
Shoot
or Not
through walls.
Yes, Ready or Not, it still hasn't fixed that yet. It is a very, very good game, but there is a little bit that I don't know if it was done on purpose or not, but the AI is able to do things that most humans can't do, which is a little concerning. Usually you can't just shoot through a wall, especially depending on the thickness of the wall or the metal or wood or whatever. But little bullshitty here and there. But it is what it is. But yeah, so definitely that, and then more Tales games. So a lot of the Tales of series has been getting remastered, getting re-released. They just released Tales of Graces, which was a PS3 game originally, and it's finally been just remastered in the sense that it's basically a port, but they did kind of touch up a little bit. A lot of these remastered, re-released MMOs, even the Final Fantasies, they'll add a little something like being able to fast forward some stuff or turn off like some things like random encounters if you just want to like breeze through the game and just do story and not do anything extra. You can like do some of that, like so little quality of life, semi quality of life changes. But I would like to see most of the franchise come back. There's a couple games that are near and dear to my heart that haven't been released or re-released and might never because of they weren't as popular as the bigger games. So I would like to just see the franchise in general. And I guess we'll kick it back to you. Deus Ex. Now,
Yeah.
I admittedly tried to play the original. I didn't hate it, but maybe because of how outdated it was, I couldn't fully engross in it. So I 100% support this. I would love to see it updated, just an update to modern graphics and some quality of life changes. Nothing else needs to be done with it, I think, and I think I would enjoy the game better. So I'm with you on this one.
Well, especially since there's been sequels to it. And the last sequel came out in 2015, Human Revolution. Or sorry, that's not right. Well, yeah, there was a sequel, and then there was the prequel, Mankind Divided, and both were freaking awesome. And I remember Deus Ex, the Revolution and Mankind blew up my computer. Like, it was just on fire because of the graphics and whatnot. And it was one of the reasons why I had to upgrade my system.
Wow.
So I could actually
like
play
literal
it.
fire or just
Pretty much the CPU was like smoking hot. So I could probably make some eggs with how much heat was coming out of the fans.
Jesus.
Yeah, but I love the hell out of Deus Ex. So much fun. And I remember playing the OG. It came out in 98, was it? No, 2000. Came out in 2000. And it's one of the games that both Vaz and I hold close to our hearts because it's one of the first games we got to play together, like knew that we were playing, we weren't playing together because it wasn't co-op, but playing at our own pace and got to have conversations about it as we reconnected over time. And just it's an incredible story, really cool sci-fi kind of Matrix-ish, role-playing RPG-ish, there's all kinds of really cool features in it. And yeah, it's an amazing game.
Soldier of Fortune, I'm looking on here and like I'm looking at screenshots and I'm vaguely remembering it, so I think I played it. But what made it stand out to you? Because I'm having trouble remembering it, which means that, in that case, maybe it wasn't as memorable for me. So I'm kind of curious as to why is it so memorable for you?
Well, so Raven was one of the companies behind making Soldier of Fortune. Raven also made Star Wars Jedi Knight. They were part of Quake 4. They were part of Wolfenstein.
Jedi Knight was such a great game.
Yeah, they also worked on the X-Men titles.
Raven does Call of Duty now, though, don't they?
Raven does Call of Duty now, yeah. So the early day of Raven, they were a lot of like D&D-ish. They did some D&D stuff. I can't remember the title of the games, but they had done some stuff way back in the day. But they were famous for Soldier of Fortune, working on Soldier of Fortune. That's kind of what set them off. And Soldier of Fortune was built on the Quake 2 engine. And it was one of the first realistic looking, violent first person shooters that was like military style. So one of the first successful multiplayer games. And it involved, for the time frame, of course, it was involving about it was something like someone was stealing nuclear weapons. So in that time, I was also playing, Rainbow Six and whatnot. So Soldier of Fortune, of course, was the perfect fit in that, badass who's just going in there and killing everyone he possibly could instead of using a team.
So with Raven, it's funny because I'm just looking them up again to remember some of the games they did, and their very first game was supposed to be a pen and paper game, and then they retooled the game Black Crypt and made it a video game.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to start with pen and paper.
Yeah.
So they they had, like you said, they had that kind of pen and paper fantasy-esque route to start with.
Yeah.
So that they're very much homegrown, taking inspirations from your classic pen and paper styles to bring in games. And they worked on I think they worked on a Star Trek game. I know they were really well known for Jedi Academy.
Which I love those games too. I'd love to see, add that on the list. I'd love to see a remake of that too.
Yeah, and they did some of the X-Men games, the X-Men Legends games, which I believe those were the correct me if I'm wrong. The X-Men, what was the series where you had 4 heroes and you kind of played in that like top-down sort of action adventure hack and slash kind of? Wasn't it the Legends games?
I think so. Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah. So yeah, that's actually really kind of neat. That they went from there. It's so weird though that they went from there to making Call of Duty.
Well, I think it's one of those things where they were going to be out of business if they didn't shift. And so they shifted. And they did a great job at shifting to a series that's going to keep them together forever. Call of Duty ain't going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I'm just looking at some of their history and like, obviously this isn't the topic. Still, I'm not going to go into it, but just seeing where they came from to be, just being 2 brothers to being like a whole company and being successful. That's really fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to name off the next. Yeah, I just want to get that one right away because it fits within our same topic. And SOCOM is another shooter. SOCOM is one of those tactical shooters.
I love SOCOM.
An exclusive PlayStation title. And
only PlayStation title shooter that I ever played and enjoyed. So not bullshitting you.
And it's not surprising though, because it's like I said, it's Ghost Recon, it's Rainbow Six OG stuff, and that's what made it so cool. And the story was great, and it made the Navy SEALs kind of put them in the gamers' heads with the tactics they do. So it'd be really cool to see Sony bring that title back, and I can't believe they haven't, and I don't know why.
2011 was their last game.
Yeah, so we're looking 14 years ago.
Yeah, that's crazy. Such a good series. For me, so on the stage of continuing with JRPGs and RPGs for me, the Grandia series is dead and gone, unfortunately. I don't know the whole story behind it. I think the company ended up not doing well towards the end and they broke up, but they had 4 games in the series. The first game was PlayStation 1. Decent RPG, JRPG. Grandia 2 was one of the first RPGs and JRPGs to appear on the Dreamcast. And that's how I played it originally, was the Dreamcast. And I loved that game very, very much. That was another game that my wife got into and really, really liked as well. And we've played that game so many times. We played it on the Dreamcast. We played it on the PlayStation. I want to say 3. It might have been 2, but might have been 3. I think there was a Nintendo port of some kind that we tried it on. I know I've played it on PC at least once or twice, and I think PS4 or PS5. I can't remember. And then they had 2 other games that didn't do well: Grandia X and Grandia 3. X was kind of a throwaway, but it was kind of interesting that they had Mark Hamill in that one. And Grandia 3, I regret not finishing that game. It was at a time in my life where money wasn't great, so it was one, and I went through a very long phase that even happens to this day. Sometimes when we get into financial straits, the first thing that I go to is sell like my video game stuff, like my consoles and stuff. So way back when younger Mark and his young marriage at the time, first son might have been born, I don't remember, but I remember selling my PlayStation and all my games. And Grandia 3 I had never finished, And I didn't know that was going to be the last game. It wasn't super duper unique, but they did have some cool things with the inventory system. You had to equip like you equipped your weapons, and your gear would your entire gear would change, your entire look would change based on the gear you wore. A lot of the times in JRPGs, it's just your weapon changes, like your core character's skin looks the exact same no matter what armor you wear. But their armor like would change as they wore new armor. And you had to equip for like your magic spells. You had to equip like these mana eggs, and they would have different spells. So you had to be selective on what character did what spells and what spells you wanted to prioritize, because you would equip the egg, and then you would learn the skill and then master it to be able to keep it without the egg. That was the only way you would get to keep the spell without having said egg equipped, was you had to master the spell. So it was unique, but not like that unique and innovative. A lot of games now have done something similar and better. So it's just a series that was near and dear to my heart when I was younger. It's not that standoutish, but you know, people who liked Grandia, and I was one of them.
I haven't played any of that stuff, but it always looks interesting.
JRPGs aren't everyone's things, because they are very story driven. Especially the older style games, if you don't want to read, and I don't blame anyone who, you know, has a hard day at work and they want to just sit down and play a game, and maybe the last thing they want to do is have to read, you know, a bunch of text, especially if you're someone who works at a desk or a computer all day, and all you're doing is reading and typing and that kind of stuff. Yeah. I can imagine coming home and reading more text is not going to be your thing. Now, granted, a lot more modern JRPGs and just RPGs in general usually have full voice acting, and that helps. But yeah, that was one of the big things. It was turn-based, so it was a little bit slower paced for people who really wanted to strategize. And there was just a lot of reading, so a lot of those older games, you know, maybe never made it to modern era because of it.
Yeah. Next one is kind of a dumb one, but it's a game called Marble Blast, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a marble, and it's a platform game where you're on
is it like
a
Super
little map,
Ball?
and kind of like kind of like that, and you're trying not to fall. Trying not to fall off the edge. It was a game that came out in 2002. And the reason why it's on my list is back when it came out, I actually switched over for about a year and a half, 2 years to Linux. And I did not have a Windows system at all. And there were very limited games back then for Linux, as Wine, which was the converter for Windows games over to Linux. That was still in early development, but Marble Blast was in the games that actually was developed for Linux, along with Mac and PC or Windows, and also came to Xbox at some point. Yeah, there you go. See, Windows. You remember? Of course
I remember.
This is one of the few games I could actually play that was on a PC Linux, and I had a blast.
You know, I don't mean to interrupt here, but I do have to say, like, Joe here had got me into Linux, well, with Windows.
Yeah.
Which, you know, now if you've never heard of it, sounds kind of silly. It's called Windows. It was literally Windows with an L. Probably wouldn't fly in modern era now, because it'd be like, oh, come on, it's an operating system with, you know, and they just swapped out a letter. But for what it's worth, it was a very smooth operating system. I did like the way it ran for its time, but it was so limited. Yeah. You know, there's a whole reason why, you know, it's kind of a joke, even to this day, when you're a Mac user and you say you're a gamer, that some people kind of laugh at you, because even though there are plenty of games now that do make their way to Mac, it's still very archaic compared to Windows when it comes to releases.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. It was fun time, you know, and honestly, like a lot of games now,
games can be fun.
Yeah, a lot of thanks to like the Stream Deck, which runs Linux, or Stream Deck. No, what is it called? Steam Deck.
Steam Deck. Yes.
Thanks to that, which runs Linux, You have only, select games work, not every single title, but a lot of them. There are thousands of games that are on Steam that will work on the Steam Deck. And that just shows you how far advancements have come with Linux. And people,
Absolutely.
a lot of people don't know, but, Android, all the Samsungs and Motorola's and Pixel phones, that's all running a version of Linux on the phone. So it is a very powerful OS that never will be able to capture, Windows, because look at what Apple's been doing for 50 years now, and they still have never been able to capture the force of what Windows and Microsoft have done.
Yeah, and I also see on your list Neverwinter Nights. Neverwinter Nights was a great game. All of those older games, Neverwinter Nights, Baldur's Gate 1 and Baldur's Gate 2, I would love to see them get the Baldur's Gate 3 treatment and get remastered and maybe re-released like Baldur's Gate 3 so that you could kind of play them as a trilogy and kind of in the same style. But Neverwinter Nights was a fantastic game for its time as well.
Neverwinter Nights, again, a game that actually came to Linux, thankfully. Yep. I feel so old now because Neverwinter Nights came out in 2002. 2002. Like,
how do you think I feel with games that came out in 98?
It's wild. But okay, so Neverwinter Nights did have a remastered version that came out, which was an awful remaster because they really didn't do a whole lot to it. Pretty much made it so you can actually, I think, download it from Steam and launch it and it runs. Where before you had to do some mods, yeah. But I would love to see a complete redone, kind of like what they did with, and I feel this one they could actually do it with, like they did with Diablo 2. Have the the game underneath it and be able to play it on top. It'd be so freaking cool because Neverwinter Nights was, I believe, my first RPG game I ever played.
Yeah, and it plays very similar. It looked like, I believe Neverwinter Nights was the one that was more Diablo-esque style gameplay than your standard RPG, but still an RPG. It doesn't matter. It's just an action RPG instead of a turn-based RPG. But it was a great game. I loved Neverwinter Nights. I was very disappointed when the enhanced edition came out. I was like, and it was like, they didn't really do anything. But Obsidian is a great company.
They've done some amazing, and they recently released Avowed.
Yes,
which Avowed. I'll be playing here soon.
But yeah, I do plan on trying it as well. I know they've got Outer Worlds 2 coming out.
Yeah, I love Outer Worlds. That was so much fun.
Outer Worlds 1 was great. Pillars of Eternity 2, Deadfire, for example. The Pillars of Eternity series was your Diablo, or not Diablo, your Baldur's Gate style game before Baldur's Gate 3 really pushed it to the forefront. But those are those ARPGs where you have your party and you build your own D&D style party and you go around the world doing adventuring and whatnot. So they have a very good track record of games. Mm-hmm. And now for me, the Xenogears Xenosaga games. Now Xenoblade is a part of that series, and they're very popular games out on the Switch. But the original Xenogears was your JRPG game with its gimmick was that you would summon mechs. And you would summon a mech and you would get inside of your mech, and sometimes you would fight bosses that only your mechs could handle. Okay. So it was like a swap between being in a big giant mobile suit and being just your random human form. And the Xenosaga games kind of built off the back of Xenogears. The Xenosaga games were your more typical JRPG for the time, but you did have the mech mechanic. And they were a mixed bag, I'll admit, because there was some changes in development during development of, I think, one or two of those games where they weren't as coherent as a trilogy as like other games would be, but they were still pretty damn good games, and I hold them in fairly high regard. So I would love to see them brought back, modernized, use that gimmick with the mech suits to really push the game as something a little bit different for JRPG people or JRP or RPG people in general, like your Mech Warrior style games and whatnot.
Yeah, those mech games are really cool.
Dragon Age, Mr. Joe, Dragon Age, the original.
And the sad part is that the main developers over on Dragon Age Origins, they already said that it would be damn near impossible to remaster this one because the coding was so complex that they had to mash things together to make it all work out, and you would have to find all the OG dudes to kind of make it work. And apparently that's and I think they lost some of the code, they said, as well. So it's a game that, again, it's such an incredible series, and how every single game that came out seemed to get further and further away from the OG. The third one, Inquisition, got as close to the OG as possible, but still, it was a different type of game. And then 4, of course, I had fun with it, but a lot of people blame DEI. A lot of people blame it was too. It wasn't as open world as the original stuff was. Kind of took a page from Dragon Age 2. But either way, Dragon Age 1 would be really, really cool to have remastered. Never gonna happen.
Yeah. Oh, and to backstep a little bit, I did look up a little something. So a lot of people are saying the reason why one of my favorite series is Grandia never went forward is not only were the last 2 games not as well received, the original creator and owner of the IP had passed away in 2011. So it's probably the IP is tied up in some places. Like, I know part 1 and part 2 were able to get remasters and a little bit of updates and brought out for more the modern era, but nothing really changed about them that much other than that they run on newer PCs. But there were no like super real updates to it. So I'm guessing there was a little bit something more doable with them because they were more well received. So there was a little bit of tie-ups with that. But anyways, off of that, so another game very near and dear to my heart, and this one's complicated because they announced a remake, and now it's in limbo. But then I heard that it wasn't, then it is. I don't know what's happening to it. Knights of the Old Republic.
It's like a major tease.
Yeah, I love the Knights of the Old Republic games 1 and 2. When they announced Old Republic, I was initially disappointed because I found out it was an MMO. Now the MMO ended up being good. Wasn't as great as it should have been because EA forced their hand and forced them to release it before it was ready.
Yeah.
Like you do, because they wanted to compete with WoW. And I still say, and I'm probably talking out my ass like I usually do, but if Star Wars The Old Republic had gotten its full development time, got to do everything it wanted to do with launch, I think that would have been the closest we would have gotten to the quote-unquote WoW killer.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, with the name of Star Wars. Yeah, possibly.
You had the name Star Wars. You had a company behind it that knew what they were doing with BioWare. I believe that was BioWare's thing.
It was BioWare, yep.
And BioWare at the time still had huge credibility.
They had a huge name, yep. They were solo. They weren't forced to do what they had to do by EA. Yep.
Exactly. So yeah, it's very unfortunate. But yeah, so Knights of the Old Republic, who knows if we'll ever actually see the remake, and who knows if it'll be good. A lot of the times when you hear something's getting remade or remastered and it goes through development hell, whether it's a movie, a TV show,
typically
whatever it may be, it ends up coming out, but it ends up coming out bad.
Yeah. Which is why
we'll see.
Dead Space was so good, because there was really no news about it coming out, and then all of a sudden, like, hey, by the way, we're releasing this here in a couple months. You're like, holy crap.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I didn't play 2. I didn't like 3. Maybe it was the mechanics. Maybe it was a little wonky. It was the only one that had a multiplayer. Yeah. So I was excited to play it with Rob, with Vaz, and we couldn't finish it. I just wasn't I know. I think Vaz says it's because of the horror aspects of the game, but I don't think they were that bad. Like I wasn't that like scared or anything, but I don't know. Some of the gameplay was just wasn't there for me. Like that I feel like it needed to be to really hold me through an entire gameplay and through the entire playthrough.
And this is something we've talked about before, where sequels to games, a lot of times they can't capture the original's feeling, and it happens in movies as well, TV shows, etc. That you know, a lot of times just the sequels just aren't good, but we crave them because they were amazing stories to be told, and that's kind of what was cool about Dead Space, the scary aspect of it. And of course, 2 and 3 didn't do as well as the first one, but nevertheless, it'd be cool to have. Since we had a remaster of the first one, it'd be cool to have the sequels done too.
Dead Space 3, right, was the only one that had multiplayer. Dead Space 2 didn't have it, right?
I don't know for sure on that one.
I think it was I think only Dead Space 3, because I remember Vaz asking me to play it with him, and he didn't ask me to play 2 with him. So, and I don't think he had already played 2 at the time. I might be wrong, but I think 3 was the only one that had multiplayer. So my question was going to be do you think that the multiplayer was added on to try and sell the game because they knew it was going to be because they knew it was going to be a bad game, because 2 already hadn't done as well.
Yeah.
And now they're coming out with a 3. So they're like, let's put multiplayer in it, and that'll make the game sell.
And when 3 came out, at that point, every single game that ever was released in the history of gaming had to have some sort of multiplayer, because that was the future of gaming, apparently. That's not the truth. There are many, and Sony does a really good job at this, release story-driven games that are just incredible, that are single player, no multiplayer, none of that gimmick stuff, that is just an incredible experience to have. So, developers, you do not need to add multiplayer. You do not need to add co-op to your game. Focus on the main game. Whatever you're trying to say and do, make that happen and let it be.
Fair. I mean, that's very fair. A lot of games I wouldn't have tried without multiplayer or co-op in it, but that doesn't mean that every game has to have it, because some games don't have to be for me. I'm just like, so if the game is about having a deep, story, and investing yourself in the story and the mechanics of the game are revolved around the story, then yeah, you don't have to have multiplayer. Talking about story-driven games, anyone who knows JRPGs, anyone who would hear my list would know that this is coming for me to say this. The Dot Hack series. Yeah. So this one,
and I even know of this series. I don't know anything about JRPGs, and I know of this one.
Well, it was an innovative thing in the sense that it was also very confusing, because they had an anime called Dot Hack Sign, and that was essentially the prequel to all the games that came out afterwards. But the way they did things was very weird, because you had that anime. There was a sequel anime that was completely different that took place after, I want to say, the first 4 Dot Hack games or something similar to that. And then the Dot Hack games themselves would sometimes release with like an anime disc that would tell like a side story of characters that were doing things in the game that you were playing, but they were doing something on the real world side of things, because you were essentially, it was the original like Sword Art Online type game where where someone got stuck in the game and they were living their life in the game because they couldn't return to the real world. So essentially, people would fall into comas, and but their spirit, their souls, their personalities, whatever, would still be kind of stuck inside of the game. And there's more to it than that. There's more fantasy-esque aspects to it. There's stuff involving computer, like a very elaborate AI virus type thing. But it was a very beloved series, and now it's been a very long time for even the first 4 games, which they did re-release the following trilogy. Well, trilogy and a quarter, because with the new re-release, they did try to add a new quote-unquote game, a fourth game, which wasn't really a game. It was essentially like an hour of new content that they added it and kind of called it a sequel, but you could only get it with the remastered trilogy. So it was all one bundle. It wasn't like they sold it on its own as its own game, as DLC, or, you know, made a 1 hour to 2 hour game and put like a $20, $30, $40 price tag on it. No, it was just something cool for the fans that you got it with the re-release. They didn't cash out on it and by adding it as its own separate thing or anything. But even those games being re-released, some of it doesn't carry over as well. Mostly terminologies, a lot of like usage of very terrible old gamer lingo, like noob and we're gonna PK you and that kind. You know, just very.
Yeah.
You know, it needs some modern quality of life changes. Some maybe
Gonna
updated.
PK you.
Yes, they need some modernization of script writing, but the original 4 games didn't get any kind of re-release at all. So I just would love to see that whole series come back, maybe refreshed. And then who knows, maybe a new generation will like it so much that it'll kickstart another series or something, because there was always little bits and pieces that they could tell that had tons of anime and manga spin-offs and other games that were Japanese exclusive. It had its own MMO that I wanted to play so badly, but we could never get it to work with our limited capabilities back then. And by the time we finally kind of got it working, the game was offline. So it was kind of like third party, you know, and you could really only just run around and kind of semi-experience it. So it wasn't the same. But
Yeah.
that one's a big franchise for me as well.
And last on my list is Red Alert. This is
I'm not
really
familiar with this
cool,
one.
you know, Command and Conquer games.
Okay, never mind. I am familiar.
Yeah, and they're really, really cool. Like, it was one of the first games that had the cutscenes were like live action. It was a live action, and I can't remember her name now. There was one of the doctors from House, the girl, for the first couple seasons. She was in it.
Okay.
You know, and just the gameplay was incredible. You know, build your base, go take out the enemies. You know, those type games. Really, really cool. And I know they remastered them not too long ago, but essentially just made them playable on modern technology. But I would love to see again enhanced graphics, enhanced sounds, even bring back the cast if they could to reshoot some of those live actions. Would be really, really cool.
I'm surprised that it's EA that owns that, so
Yeah.
and they like money, so I'm surprised they haven't done that. Yeah, that's yeah. I never really big into Command and Conquer at all, but I know that it was a very beloved series for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got one more on your list, Mark?
Finally, XCOM 1 and 2. I love XCOM 2. I play it probably once a year at this point now. I have over 400 hours in that game.
I found this one interesting because it's only 13 years old. It's a rather new game per se. It's based on the Unreal Engine as well. So that's how new it is.
Yeah, XCOM 1 needs more of a little bit of an update than 2. 2, I would just kind of like to just see some quality of life changes. There's still a lot of old school bugs that sometimes persist. It's got tons of mod support, but a lot of it kind of breaks the game, or the game breaks the mods, like almost in a sense. Like there's just some things that a lot of the mods do that should have been like core aspects of the game. This one's more selfish in the sense that I would just like to see some quality of life updates. Make XCOM 1 a little bit newer so that I could play it 1 right into 2. and maybe just a slight graphic refresh because I loved XCOM 2. They came out with that Chimera Squad and it was not that great.
It changed so much and it was a bit disappointing.
We're still waiting for XCOM 3 to even be announced to the point where it's another one of those games where it's probably going to happen. I can't imagine it doesn't happen given Firaxis, I believe it's XCOM is their bread and butter, and then after that, what do they got? Civ, I think, is their other.
That's about it, yeah. So
And
maybe they
Civ-
put so much effort into Civ, and now we'll be getting, XCOM focus on. Who knows?
Although I am worried because I don't know. I'm hearing a lot of mixed reviews about 7. I'm hearing a lot of people don't like 7.
They changed a lot of features apparently.
And people don't like it when you change things.
Yeah, and then they also eliminated some things, so
Yeah.
it's not going well. But they'll listen. They'll listen. It will be one of those games that within a year it will be the game that the fans have wanted.
Like, look, 6 wasn't well received when it came out either because it was so different than 4 and 5. And now I'd say Civ 6 is fairly still. I mean, people who still love 4 and 5 still love 4 and 5 more than 6.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of those haters they quelled their hatred and be like, well, it's not 4 or it's not 5, but it's not as bad as we initially thought, but it's not our go-to, but it still did really well and ended up being a solid game. It was my, I don't want to say it was my first time playing Civ. I played some of the older ones, but it was the first Civ game that hooked me.
Yeah.
So 6 would be my favorite of the series because it was the one that grabbed me. So I'm apprehensive about playing 7, but I will eventually give it a try and see. I think the only thing that I hated about 6 was how they did everything. It was like Civ 6, and then they released, I think, 1 or 2 DLCs. But then they did a season pass that had the DLCs, and then they did. I can't remember the release order, but they had so many like quasi releases as well as like doing individual packs that you were better off just waiting for it all to be grouped together than to do the initial buying. So like a lot of it at times did feel like a cash grab. So it was a little insulting that way, but it was also one of those games that if you just were patient, you could grab a really fucking good deal on a bundle. You could, I think if you buy everything full price right now, it's at least $80, if not more. It's probably more, but you would see it go on regular sale for like a big sale, like the autumn sale or the winter sale, and maybe grab the whole thing for $30 or less. So you'd be getting $100+ worth of content for like $30.
Oh yeah, and thousands of hours of gameplay if you want to. Like, it's endless.
So XCOM 3, I'm still hopeful for, but I'm a little apprehensive too. But for now, I at least love to see them give like some updates to XCOM 1 and 2. But that's pretty much my list.
Yeah, well, this list is really cool. We got to talk about some really interesting things and games that are close to our hearts and help define who we are and passion within the series we have. Yeah, and that we're old. But unless you have anything else, Mark, to add, I think this is a wrap.
Yeah, no, nothing too much to add. Just if you're at all interested, just be on the lookout. Especially if you use Twitter, Hisoka RPG. That's all of my tags: Discord, Twitter, Blue Sky, Twitch, YouTube. I put out videos on YouTube. A lot of them is just like unboxing stuff of either figurines or Transformers, but my VODs will go there eventually. I'm going to be starting streaming again soon. I was originally supposed to start back up on my birthday, which was February 7th, but I've had a few things I needed to set back because I wanted to be ready for it. And then I also had a friend come into town, so I kind of pushed it back again because I didn't want to have to be like, oh, my friend's in town, but hey, I can't hang out with you today, even though you don't come to America very often. But I'm going to stream today instead. So you just sit in your hotel room instead. So, but here coming soon, I'll probably just move it to the beginning of March just to be like an even start point. But yeah, so if you're at all interested, you can follow me on those places or check out when I go live on Twitch eventually. But that's it. Sorry for the self promo. Also, make sure you watch Joe's YouTube channel.
Yeah, make sure you don't. And as always, thanks for listening and watching our podcast. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Yeah, bye-bye.